Hello everybody, welcome to part 2, my Roll Through the Ages, the Iron Age gameplay video, where we have the mighty Greeks versus the Romans, or as I like to call it, the green versus the yellow player. The green player is going to start off with the extra port, and the yellow player is going to start off with the extra province, meaning they're military, and also they're also going to have a little bit more tribute than the green player, who's also going to be able to produce a little bit more financially in the beginning of the game. That's the trade-off between those starting decisions, and the green mighty empire gets to go first. The green empire has 2 ports, so they get 2 empire dice, plus they get the fate die. They roll their dice to see exactly what they're going to get at the beginning of the game. We're going to get extra resources, we're going to get some food, and we're going to die that can be used as food or as workers. Now we need to look at what we've rolled and decide if those are the dice we want to keep. We can re-roll any of them. Some of them, all of them, are just keep what we got and go ahead and collect our resources right where we stand. And while this beginning roll would have been actually fantastic for the yellow player to start off with, since their empire is going to start draining food a lot faster than the green empire will, it's probably not the best roll for a green player who wants to go for more of a development in the beginning, whereas our yellow players go more for an aggressive beginning. So we're going to go ahead and decide to take all 3 of these dice, roll it again. Hopefully we won't get any skulls at all. Now we got a conquest, which is something we definitely probably don't want to do as a green player. We have a skull, so we're stuck with that. And then we have a die that's going to give us food or workers, pretty much one of the dice we already had. Now we need to make a decision if we want to re-roll any of these dice, or if we want to keep with what we got, because we only have 1 more re-roll left for us to decide on. The conquest die does us absolutely no good, so we know we're going to re-roll this one. And quite honestly, we don't really want workers, especially since we have a skull, which isn't going to give us much of anything. So what we're really hoping for is that we're going to get something that's going to give us some more goods. So we're going to re-roll this dice too. Now remember, you only get 3 total rolls, and this will be our 3rd roll. So we have to take what we get no matter what ends up for the final roll. And it looks like we're going to get conquest again. Again, nothing really going to help us. And we're going to get some food, which can help us for our stockpiles. So the first thing we need to do is we need to gather the resources that we managed to gain from our roll of the dice. We're going to get 1 good from the skull die. So we'll go ahead and go from 1 good to 2 goods. And we're also going to get 3 food, so we're going to go from 3 food all the way up to 6 food. And that's all the resources we get. Now we have to deal with the skull that we got. If we look over here at the table, we're going to see that 1 skull means that we're going to go ahead and suffer some unrest in our empire, which is going to give us 1 point of disaster, which is going to be worth -1 victory points at the end of the game. We simply mark that by covering in 1 of the skulls, so we know at the end of the game we're going to lose 1 victory point. And now we get to move on to the feeding phase for our empire. The mighty young green empire currently only has 1 province, so they only need to feed 1 province, which is going to cost them 1 food, leaving them with 5 food left over. That's the end of the feeding and disaster phase. Now we would normally go on to conquest, since we did roll a conquest die. Unfortunately, our military is only 1, which is not going to be worth anything for any conquest, so we can decide not to do any conquest. And we don't have to worry about any battles or invasions, because we didn't get that amount of skulls. So we're going to move on to the part of our phase where we actually get to do some purchases and see if we can improve our empire, because we do have 1 worker left to assign, and we do have some goods to also possibly purchase some advancements for our empire. For our purchase phase, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and send the 1 worker we have from our remaining die that hasn't been used. We're going to go ahead and put them to work, and what we're going to have them do is they're going to start working on building our port. So we're going to mark the square off and fill it in to show that we put 1 worker towards building our port. And unfortunately, that's all the workers we have. We do have a couple of goods we could spend on the building phase, or we can save those for the 5th phase. We're going to go ahead and work on some developments, which may be a better idea for our empire in this stage. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and spend 2 goods, because we do currently have 2 goods in our empire. And we're going to spend both these goods to get the very first development, which is leadership. Cost 2 goods to do it. It's going to be worth 1 victory point, but at the end of every rolling phase, we can take and re-roll 1 die if we like, including a skull result, which have helped us in this turn, so it's definitely something we're thinking about buying, and we're going to go ahead and buy it. And that's going to end our turn, because we don't have any goods to stockpile as money resources. That's going to end the green player's turn, and now we move over to the yellow warlike empire, see what they can do on their very first turn with 1 fate die and 2 empire dice. The yellow player gets to start with 1 fate die and 2 die, because remember, we have fate die we always roll, and we happen to have 2 provinces, so we get 2 dice, and we're going to start with 1 skull. We have no choice. We have to keep that. And we also get 2 dice, which could be 2 innovations, which would be total worth of 6 development points, which is actually a very, very good development. So we may just stay with that because we have enough food to feed our empire. And if you don't have enough food to feed your empire, you're going to lose one, or you're going to suffer 1 point of disaster for every province that you can't feed. Luckily, we have 3 food and we only need to feed 2 provinces. This would actually allow us to buy the metallurgy innovation, which is in turn every one of these torch symbols into 5 development points instead of just 3. So that might be pretty darn good, and I'm actually thinking that's what we're going to stick with, because we're going to try to grow our empire very, very quickly for the yellow player. So since we're done rolling our dice, we got to resolve exactly what we're going to get. We're going to get 1 good resource, so we're going to go ahead and move our goods up from 1 to 2. And then we need to feed our empire. We have 2 provinces, so we're going to go from 3 down to 1 food. And then we need to resolve a disaster. Since we have 1 skull, we know that means 1 disaster's worth of skull, which is going to be unrest, which means we're going to take 1 disaster skull. Again, that's worth -1 victory points at the end of the game. Not too big of a deal at this point. We don't have to take care of any battles because there's no battles on the fortune die, and we didn't get any barbarians or any invaders, so don't have to worry about that. So now we get to move on to building and see if there's anything we can build to improve our empire. We do have 1 worker to assign, and remember, workers not assigned are not carried over, so if we don't put them to work doing something, we're going to go ahead and lose them, so we definitely want to use them. We're going to use our 1 worker that we have, who's going to go ahead and start working on our 3rd province. So we're going to fill in the 1 square of our province that lets us know that our 1 worker has been put to use. This die doesn't give us any more resources, so we're done building unless we want to spend goods, which we definitely don't want to do. So we're going to go ahead and spend our 2 innovations on the 5th phase and start getting some developments. So this is worth 3 development points. This is worth 3 development points for a total of 6 development points. We're going to spend those 6 points to get metallurgy, which means that we now have 5 victory points at the end of the game. And anytime we roll one of these dice with this face, we're going to get 5 points for developments instead of 3, making these dice much more powerful for us and allowing us to get developments much, much quicker. We don't have enough goods to transfer into money, so that's pretty much the end of the yellow player's turn. We now move on to the green player again, who still only gets 1 fate die and 1 empire die because they didn't build another port or a province. Now the green player for their turn, they want ports and they also want workers, but they definitely want to get goods so they can start building more ports. So they're going to roll their dice. We're going to get 1 skull, so we're pretty much stuck with that. We can't re-roll it, but at least we did get 1 of the goods dice, which is going to be worth 2 goods. So we're going to get a total of 3 goods so far. And plus we have this worker or this food die that we need to decide if we want to keep it or go ahead and re-roll it. We know that food really is not a concern for us right now because we have 5 food and we only need to feed 1 province, so we only need 1 food. So if we were to keep this die, we'd probably keep it just for the workers, or we can go ahead and re-roll it because we still have 2 rolls left. We're going to go ahead and press our luck, and we're going to get the same thing again, and we need to decide if we want to press our luck for a 3rd time. Now we could end up getting more workers, we could end up getting some innovation, we could get some more goods, or we could get the dreaded skull, so we need to decide if that's what we really want to press our luck and do. We're actually going to go ahead and not press our luck and go ahead and take the results of what we've got right here and gain some resources. So the first thing we need to do is figure out exactly how many goods we're going to get. We're going to get 1 good for the skull, plus this die is going to give us 1 good for every single port we have. And if we forget there's an anchor there, matches the anchor here, so we have 2 ports, so this die is going to be worth 2 goods, plus this is going to give us a total of 3 goods. So we're going to move up from 0 up to 3 goods. We are not going to use this die for food, we're actually just going to use it for workers. So this die won't help us the rest of the turn. This one is still going to give us a disaster, 1 worker, and this die is going to give us 2 more workers. So now we move on to the feed and disaster part of our turn. We have 1 province, you feed it 1 food, we go from 5 to 4. Suffer the disaster, which is going to be unrest, so we're going to take 1 disaster from the unrest, which is going to be worth 1 victory point loss at the end of the game. We suffered 2 disasters, so at the end of the game we're going to lose 2 victory points, so we want to make sure we don't take too many of those disasters. And then we skip the battle phase, we move on to the building phase where we need to decide exactly what we want to build. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our 2 workers that we happen to have. We need to figure out exactly where we want them to go to work. First thing we're going to do is we're going to put 1 of them to work building our 4th port. You can build in advance if you like, even though we don't have the goods to produce those ports. We can start putting those workers to work at least. This is going to leave us with 2 workers. This worker we went and spent already for the port. We have 2 workers right here. We're going to use those to start building the city walls in case we start getting some barbarians and start getting some bad luck, because we definitely don't have the military to stop those barbarians from attacking us. All of our workers have been spent, and now we need to figure out exactly if we want to spend any goods on our turn. We're going to go ahead and spend all 3 of our goods, which is going to allow us to build our 3rd port So we fill in the good symbols because there's 3 of them to build a port. We now have access to 3 dice on our turn. We spent all our goods. We don't have any resources to build developments. So that's basically going to be the end of the green player's turn. We now move back over to the yellow player. The yellow player on their turn knows that they need to get at least 1 food because their empire is going to take 2 food to feed, and we happen to only have 1 food left in our stockpile. So we know at least one of these dice have to be set towards getting us food. So we need to figure out what else we can get just by looking at that. So we're going to get a skull, which means we're pretty much stuck with it. We can't do anything with it. We're going to get the 3 food side of the die, which is the best that die can ever give us. And then we're going to get the conquest die. Since we're stuck with the skull, and we really not too sure we want to do a conquest yet because it's only going to give us 2 victory points and isn't really worth it at this point until we start building up our military, we're going to go ahead and re-roll the fate die. And what we're hoping for is we're going to get the omen side so we can re-roll the skull. We're going to get the side that's going to demand tribute from the other players. That would be worth 2 victory points to us if we decide to keep it. Don't want the tribute. We're going for the omen side because, again, we want to re-roll that skull, and we're hoping we're going to get lucky. And we got extremely lucky, and we managed to roll the omen die, so we're going to go ahead and decide to re-roll this die right here because we don't want to deal with that skull, and we're going to see what we get. Hopefully we're going to get some workers so we put them to work and start improving our empire. And we got the best result we could have. We got 3 more workers. So we've actually done pretty darn good for our empire this turn, and we're going to go ahead and see what kind of results we're going to go ahead and get. So the first thing we need to do is we need to gather our food. So we're going to gain 3 food. So we're going to go from 1 to 4 total food. So this die is going to be spent. This was used for the reroll, so that die isn't any good anymore. So we're not going to get any good, so now we move on to the feeding our empire and possible disasters phase. We didn't get any skulls, so we don't have to worry about disasters, but we definitely need to feed our empire with our 2 provinces, so we're going to go down from 4 food all the way down to 2 food. We'll skip the battle phase, and we get to go on to the purchasing phase, where we get to put our 3 workers to work and also possibly spend some of those goods. The first thing the yellow player is going to go ahead and do is they're going to put all 3 of their workers to work, and they're going to put 1 worker right here, which is going to allow them to build their 3rd province. So now we're up to 3 dice. We're going to take our 2nd worker and start working on our 4th province. And then we're going to take our 3rd worker, and they're going to help build this port by spending 1 of the workers, which puts all these workers to work. Then we're going to spend our 2 goods to go ahead and build our 2nd port. And that pretty much spends all of our resources. We don't have anything left over for development, so that's pretty much going to end the yellow player's turn. And we're back over to the green player, who gets to roll 3 dice for the empire plus the fate die at the start of their turn. So the green player gets 3 empire dice and 1 fate die, and we're going to see what kind of results we're going to get. We're going to get 1 skull, so we're stuck with that. We're going to get the bountiful harvest, which makes any food we're going to get much more valuable. We don't really need food right now, so we're going to be re-rolling this. We probably don't need to keep this one, even though it's a very nice die to have to get some extra back stock of food, but then we're going to re-roll that one, and this one isn't too great either, so we're going to go ahead and re-roll all 3 of our dice and hope for some better results. We're going to get 1 innovation, 1 drought, and then 1 food. Now the drought's going to make it so this die only gives us 2 food, so that's really not worth it, and we still have 1 roll left over, so we're going to go ahead and take it. And again, we're going to re-roll the food, and we're going to re-roll this drought die because we don't want any droughts. We're going to get the abundance and the food. I guess this empire just loves to produce food. Luckily, we do have the leadership innovation, so we can re-roll 1 die. We're going to go ahead and choose to re-roll this skull and see what kind of result we can get. We're going to get a port, which is probably a lot better than anything we've already rolled because that's going to give us some extra goods. We're actually quite happy with the rolls we've gotten now. So we're going to go ahead and collect our resources. Considering we have this showing, we're going to gain 1 good for every port we have. We have 3 ports built, so we're going to gain 3 goods. We're going to go from 0 to 3. We have the abundance, which means this is going to give us 4 food instead of 3, because this is going to give us plus 1 food for every die that gives food. So going to give us a total of 4 food, so we're going to go from 4 all the way up to 8 food. And then this is going to give us an innovation, which we can use towards development, so we'll save that one off to the side. All 3 of these dice are pretty much used up. We just need to go ahead and feed our empire. We have 1 province. That's going to go from 8 back down to 7 food. We don't have any disasters to worry about. We don't have any battles to worry about. So now we can go ahead and start expanding our empire and making some purchases. The green player likes the idea of getting more dice to roll because that's going to be worth more resources. So we're going to go ahead and spend all 3 of our goods right now.
And we're going to go ahead and use that to build our fourth port, since we've already put one worker towards it. Plus the 3 goods, we have now built our fourth port, and now we're going to start getting 4 dice every time we roll, so that's going to help our empire quite a bit. We're not going to make any more purchases on our turn, so now we just need to figure out what we're going to do with this innovation die, which is going to give us 3 innovation points to start spending on developments. There's only a couple innovations we can get. We can get granaries, we can get die making, or we can get formations. Formations will help our military. Granaries will help us with our food shortages, which we definitely don't have. So this looks like the best thing we may want is the die making, which is going to give us the ability to start producing even more goods every single turn. So we're definitely going to go ahead and take that. We'll spend the 3 we get from here on the die making, which is going to give us 2 victory points at the end of the game. And now at the start of, or at the end of every one of our rolling phases, we're going to get to collect 1 extra good, and that's going to help us for the rest of the game for our budding empire. That's all we want to do for the green player. We now get to go over to the yellow player's turn, who also gets to roll 3 empire dice plus the fate die. The yellow player starts their turn. They're going to get the tribute. They're going to get lots of food, which is definitely a good thing because our empire is getting very, very large and it requires 3 food already, and we want to start stockpiling because we know it's going to start draining our food very, very quickly. So we have the tribute we can get from another player. Not that great since we have, actually we should have 5 army because I forgot to raise that up when we built our second one right here, which also gave us 2 tribute, which I forgot to do. Sorry about that. So we're now up to 3 tribute. Our military is now at 5. So we actually think we're going to demand tribute from the other player because that's going to be some victory points. We're liking the food, and we're also liking the workers in the fact that we definitely want a couple workers anyways because 2 workers is what we need to build our 4th province. So we're actually just going to stay with what we rolled. So now what we need to do is we need to collect our resources. We're going to gain 6 food, so we're going to go from 2 all the way up to 8 food. That's going to be all the resources we're going to gain because we're not getting any goods yet. We're going to use this one for the workers, so we know we're not going to gain any food out of that one. So now the next thing we need to do is we need to feed our empire. We have 3 provinces, so we're going to go down from 8 down to 5 food. We don't have any disasters, but we do have a battle. We're going to demand tribute from the other players. So what we need to do to demand tribute is we compare our military versus their military, and the difference is tribute they have to give us, or instead they can decide to give us 1 good, and that actually is a good that they'll lose and we'll gain. Unfortunately, the green player doesn't have a good to give us, so when we demand tribute, it's going to give us victory points. Our 5 military versus their 1 military means that we're going to gain 4 points of tribute, which will be victory points at the end of the game. Now we get to move on to the building phase, and we get to put our 2 workers to work. That's all we needed to build our 4th province. We now have access to 4 dice, just like the green player. That's going to give us 2 more points of military. We're now up to 7 military. And it's also going to give us 3 more points of tribute. And just from tribute, we're going to get 10 victory points at the end of the game, just from building our military the way we've been doing it. And we definitely outmatch our enemy on the military, which is great in case we start getting any barbarian attacks. We don't have any other points we want to spend for development. That's pretty much going to end the yellow player's turn. We're now back to the green player who needs to make some decisions. Luckily, they get 4 dice to roll along with the fate die. The green player gets abundance. They're going to get an innovation. They get a skull. They're going to get some workers, which is definitely something they want, is some workers right now, so they start building some of these wonders. This innovation die looks pretty decent for them right now, but they don't need the abundance because food is definitely not something we need right now. So we're going to re-roll this. We're going to keep the workers here. And we're thinking about re-rolling these 3 dice right here. We don't know if we want the innovation because the only thing we can buy is formations, which is +2 to our military, which could be decent if the yellow player decides to demand more tribute from us, but probably not going to help us at this stage of the game. The other thing is we can convert goods into food. We don't really need to do that at all. Or that's pretty much the only thing we can do with this innovation die unless we manage to get some more goods. And we don't have the goods for any other innovations, so we know we're going to re-roll this die too. So we'll keep the workers. We don't have a choice with the skull, and we're going to re-roll these 3 dice. We're going to get abundance again, another innovation, and a couple more workers, which we're definitely going to keep. We have 1 more re-roll. Again, we don't want this innovation. We're going to re-roll these 2 dice. We're going to get another worker, which is good. We're going to get drought, which is going to mean we're going to produce less food, but we're not getting any food from our dice, so we don't need to worry about it. And we have this 1 skull. Luckily, we have leadership, so we're going to go ahead and use that to re-roll the skull. And that's going to give us what we were really looking for, the ability to gain some more goods. So this is a fantastic roll for the green player. Now that we're done rolling, we need to collect our resources. We're not going to gain any food because we didn't roll any, but we're definitely going to gain some goods from our ports. Since we have 1 goods dice and we have 4 ports, 4 times 1 is 4. We're going to gain 4 goods, which we're going to add to our resource board. We don't have any food to worry about, so the next thing we need to do is deal with skulls, which we didn't get any, and also deal with feeding our empire. Since we only have 1 province, it's going to cost us 1 food. We'll go from 7 down to 6. We don't have any battles to worry about. So next thing we do is we need to put these workers to work and figure out exactly what we want them to do. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to spend 1 worker on a port, and then we're going to spend all 4 of our goods to go ahead and finish building that port. So now we're going to have access to 5 dice to roll, which is great for our empire, allows us to build our empire even quicker. But that still leaves us with 8 workers left over, so we're going to go ahead and build the Great Wall to protect us from a barbarian. Since we're starting to get a lot more dice, there's a higher chances of us getting more skulls, so we have to be very, very careful. We have 8 workers left over. We're going to spend 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 workers. That spends all of our workers. 1 plus 8 is a total of 9 workers. All of our workers have been put to good use. Our goods are all spent. We're done developing our nation for this round, and we have now built the Great Wall. So we're going to get 6 victory points at the end of the game. And the yellow player, if they build the Great Walls, the best they can do is get 4 victory points out of it. So they probably don't want to concentrate on it, especially since they don't really need it, since they already have a great military to protect themselves. The green player doesn't have anything to spend for developments. That's going to end their turn. We now get to move back over to the yellow player, who gets to roll 4 empire dice plus the 1 fate die and see what kind of results they can get. The yellow player needs at least 4 food to feed their empire. Since we have 4 provinces, luckily we have 5 food in the reserves, so we don't need to rely on rolling food this turn, but if we do, we're definitely not going to turn it down. So we got the 1 food we're going to keep. We have the 3 workers we definitely want to keep. We have the 2 skulls we don't have a choice, we have to keep. Then we have this 1 die which can give us goods. We do have 2 ports that would give us 2 goods that we can spend. And goods are definitely something we're going to start gathering up, especially since it's the only way we're going to be able to start building some more ports and also start increasing our developments. So it looks like we're going to take what we got and we're going to stick with it. So what we need to do is we need to gather our resources. We're going to gain 1 good plus another good plus 2 goods for a total of 4 goods on our goods board. We're then going to gain 3 food to our empire, which is going to go from 5 all the way up to 8. That means these dice are all spent. We don't have to worry about them. We're going to get the workers off of these, though. But before we do that, we need to feed our empire, which takes 4 food, bring us from 8 all the way back down to 4. Then we need to suffer a disaster. And in this case, the disaster is going to be attack from barbarians. Barbarians with a strength of 4 who we overpower, so this is actually going to be a good thing for our empire. The barbarians are going to attack our mighty empire with a strength of 4. We're going to retaliate with a strength of 7. 7 minus 4 is 3. We're going to demand some tribute for them daring to attack our mighty empire, which is going to give us 3 points of tribute. Unfortunately, war can be tough and very damaging to any economy, so we are going to lose a little bit from our power, going from a 7 down to a 6 military. That ends the battle phase. We now get to spend some resources and start improving our empire. The first thing we're going to do during our build phase is we're going to put all 3 of these workers to work, and you guessed it, we're going to build our 5th province, which is going to give us more power. So now we have access to 5 dice. We gain plus 4 tribute, which is going to be 4 victory points at the end of the game. And since we're playing the short game, the first person to get 30 tribute is also going to end the game. Or if somebody manages to get 5 developments, or if we get a certain amount of monuments built, that's also going to end the game. So the yellow player is trying to rush the end game by getting a whole bunch of tribute, because that's going to be a lot of victory points for them at the end of the game. So we spent our workers, we got our tribute, our military is going to go up by 2. Unfortunately, the max is 7, so we're going to get 1 strength added. So we're going to be a total of 7 military, and we're not going to build... Actually, no, I'm going to take that back. We're going to do a little bit more building, because we still have 2 workers left over. We're going to spend 1 of those workers and a second worker. They're going to work on the ports. We're going to spend 3 of our 4 goods to go ahead and build our 3rd port, which means we now have 3 goods we're going to get if we get that lucky roll on the dice. So that actually help us to start building some more of these developments, because now we're going to get goods for developments, and we're also going to get innovations for development. So we want to start building and improving our empire, and hopefully we can win the game as the yellow player. That pretty much ends the yellow player's turn. We now move back to the green player, who has access to 5 empire dice plus the fate die to see exactly what they're going to get to build up their empire. The green player doesn't need conquest, so we know we're going to re-roll that die. We're going to go ahead and keep the 1 workers. We're going to keep the 3 food. We have to keep the skull dice, at least for now, until we use our leadership. So we're going to go ahead and re-roll these 2 dice plus a conquest die, and hopefully we're going to get something even better. We're going to get stuck with another skull, not necessarily a good thing. We're going to get the drought, which means our food's going to be less valuable. And we're going to get a worker or a food die. We have 1 reroll left. We're going to go ahead and reroll these 2 and hopefully get something even better. Unfortunately, we didn't. We're now stuck with 3 skulls, 1 innovation, some food, and some workers. Luckily, we do have the ability to reroll 1 die, so we're going to reroll 1 of these skulls. We need to figure out which one we want to reroll. Although, if we really think about it, 3 skulls is going to give pestilence, which is actually going to affect the opponent, not us. We're actually going to go ahead and keep all 3 of these skulls. We're not going to use our leadership. Actually, we are going to use our leadership. Possibly reroll this, and we are thinking about it. We're just going to go ahead and keep it. We don't want to risk another skull, because a 4 skull would definitely hurt our empire a lot. So we're going to go ahead and hedge our bets, keep the innovation, keep the workers, keep the food, and have the ability to hurt an opponent's empire through pestilence. So now the green player needs to grab their resources. We're going to gain 3 goods. So we're going to go from 0 back up to 3 goods. We're going to gain 3 food, so we're going to go from 6 all the way up to 9 food. We only own 1 province, so we need to feed it, bring us back down to 8. And now we need to resolve these skulls. This player over here, the yellow player, is going to be suffering from pestilence throughout their empire, which is going to be worth -3 points as disasters. So we just fill in 3 skulls. We now have taken a total of 4 points worth of disasters, which is going to be worth -4 points at the end of the game. So that's not quite good for our score. And now the green player gets to go on and go to the battle phase. There's no battles they need to worry about, so now they get to go on to the purchasing phase and start building up their empire, where we have some workers to put to work, and we also have some innovation to go ahead and spend on our empire. Let's go ahead and start with the workers. We have 6 workers to put to work right now, and we also have some goods. The green player wanted to go for a large amount of victory points and build some wonders before their opponent wants to do, is going to go ahead and spend all 6 of those workers working on building the Colosseum, which is going to be 6 workers towards it, 9 more workers, and the Colosseum is theirs, which means they also going to get 13 victory points. They are done putting all their workers to work. Now they need to do is spend their innovations on some developments, and what we're going to do is we're going to spend 3 goods, bring us back down to 0, plus the 3 innovations for a total of 6, which is going to allow us to spend 6 right here, get metallurgy, which is worth 5 victory points at the end of the game, and that also means that any time we roll one of these torches, they're going to be worth 5 instead of 3. We don't have any goods that we want to turn into money because we don't have any goods. That's going to end the green player's turn. We now go back to the yellow player, who also gets to roll 4 empire dice plus the fate die, and hopefully we can get some really good results and possibly score a lot of points. Of course, the biggest concern for the yellow player's empire is they need at least 5 food to keep their ever-growing empire going. Unfortunately, we have 4 food in the stores, so at least one of our dice needs to be put towards food. The rest of it, we can go ahead and see how we can spend. So we're going to get a skull and a skull. Luckily, we're going to get an omen, which will allow us to re-roll a die if we like. We're going to get 2 of these dice, which is going to give us some goods, which is going to give us a total of 6 goods if we decide to use both of them. And we also have some workers to go ahead and put to work. It's actually looking like we got a pretty good roll, but we also... Yeah, actually, you know what? This actually looks like a really good roll for us. This will give us enough workers. No, we need more food, so it's not a good roll for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and spend this to re-roll this, and hopefully it's a food die, because that's really, really what we need right now. Except we can't do that quite yet. We need to really make a decision here, because this is actually looking like we have a couple different decisions we need to make. Because once we use the omen die to re-roll, we can't use any of our other re-rolls, so we have to make a really quick decision here. Looks like we're going to go ahead and try to get some food with this die. We're going to take our second roll, and we're going to get food. Do we want to press our luck and go for the best food? Probably not. So now we're going to go ahead and burn our omen die to re-roll one of these skulls, and hopefully we're going to get more food, because that's really what we need. And unfortunately, we ended up getting a second skull, which doesn't help us, but at least we're going to get some barbarians to kind of tear apart to gain some victory points. So what we need to do is we need to get some goods. We have 3 ports, so this is going to be worth 3 goods. Each skull is worth an additional good, so we're going to gain 5 total goods. We're going to go from 1 goods all the way up to 6 goods. We're going to gain 2 food because we're going to use this die for food. That's going to bring us from 4 all the way up to 6 food. We have 5 provinces. That means we have to spend 5 food, bring us down from 6 all the way down to 1 food. And now we need to do any battles. We don't have any battles, so now we get to start spending some resources to help improve our empire and see exactly what kind of strategy we want to start using. But before we build up our empire, we need to make sure we take care of these pesky barbarians from the 2 skulls we got. So we have 7 military versus the 4 strength of the barbarians is going to give us 3 points of tribute. We're going to suffer the casualties of war, go down to 6 strength in our military. And of course, this is also when I remembered I forgot to use the die making for the green player when they collected the resources. So they're actually going to have 1 more good on their board because I did forget to do that. But let's go ahead and finish the yellow player's turn here and figure out exactly what they want to build with their current resources. We are in the build phase. We have 5 workers to put to work. We're going to go ahead and spend 4 workers on building our provinces, which is probably not the best thing to do in the world because we're all having a heck of a food shortage. But you know what? We're going to go ahead and push our luck and see exactly what we can do when we got a whole bunch of provinces. This is going to give us 5 points of tribute, which means we're now up to 25 points on the tribute. Again, we're trying to push that ending. We're going to gain a point on our military. Remember, the max is 7. And we now have access to 6 dice. If we get a really lucky roll at the start of our next turn, we can actually pull the end of the game if we play very, very smart because we're up to 25 tribute already. And as soon as somebody hits 30, that is going to end the game. We do have 1 worker left over. We're going to go ahead and put him work towards building the obelisk. Because if we don't get a conquest on our next turn, which will allow us to end the game with a victory, looking at the score points, at least it'll help us start building towards some other monuments and put a lot of more pressure on the green player. We do have 6 resources left over that we can go ahead and spend if we want to. Now we got a decision. We can either hope that on the next turn we get lucky with the fate die, get a conquest, and instantly pretty much win the game. But if we don't, we need to make sure we're going to get set up for the future round so at least the green player doesn't pull a quick win on us. So we need to make a couple quick decisions. And we know for our empire, the biggest thing is since we built so fast with all these provinces, that food is definitely a problem for our empire, at least producing enough food. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and spend 5 goods, bring us from 6 all the way back down to 1. And we're going to go ahead and get the irrigation advancement, which costs 5 points. It's going to give us 4 victory points in the game. And every time we roll a food on one of the food die, it's going to give us an extra bonus food, which will help pay for our very, very large empire, which takes a lot of food to keep running. Now, the green player has a couple of decisions they need to make. They know that the yellow player could force the end game if they can get a tribute out of them on the roll, and they don't have a good cover, so they don't have to give any tribute. Or if they get a conquest and decide to do a conquest, they can pretty much win the game either way. So what we need to do is we need to figure out a way to start getting a lot of victory points very quickly in case the yellow player pulls out the win on their turn. So we're going to go ahead and roll the dice. We're going to get some goods. We're going to get some workers, and we're also getting innovation. And also, if we had any food, we'd be able to get extra food, which is something we don't need. So we need to figure out if this is going to be a good roll for us if we want to roll again. And actually, looking at this, believe it or not, this is probably one of the best things we could have rolled for Empire. This is going to give us 10 goods. This is going to give us 5 innovation plus our dying, which is going to allow us to have a total of 17, which allows us to buy a very good development, which is going to give us a lot of victory points. We're going to get workers, which allows us to build a monument. And if we have the ability, and it looks like we do, if we bought civics, we're going to get an extra 3 victory points for every monument we built. Well, we can build this one, and we definitely build a second one, which would be an extra 6 victory points. So we can probably garner a whole bunch of victory points on this turn, which may give the yellow player second thoughts about trying to rush the end game when we know that the green player is going to come from behind and score a lot of victory points on this turn. So we're actually going to go ahead and stick with what we rolled for this turn. We're going to go ahead and gather our resources. So since we have 5 ports, we're going to gain 10 goods, plus die making is be 1 more for a total of 11, putting us at a total of 12 goods. And then we're not going to gain any food, but we do need to feed our empire. Our empire still only has 1 province, so we're going to go down from 8 down to 7 food. We don't have to worry about any battles at all. So the next thing we need to do is we need to do some growing and some building our empire, and we have 6 workers to go ahead and put to work here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get the obelisk, which is going to take 5 of our workers right there. That means we're going to get 2 victory points for it, and that means that the yellow player cannot get 2 victory points. They only get 1 victory point if they decide to go for the obelisk. That leaves us with 1 worker left over, which we're going to use over here to go ahead and get our next port in case we need to work on, in case there's going to be another round to the game. And then we're going to go ahead and be done putting our workers to work, and now we're going to go ahead and work on our developments. This is worth 5 right now. We know this for a fact simply because we have the metallurgy, so there's 5 right there. Plus we need 10 more, so we're going to spend 10 of our goods to go down from 12 all the way down to 2 for a total of 15, which allows us to buy civics, which is going to give us 13 victory points, allows us to ignore civil wars, and also means that for every monument we build, we're going to get an extra 3 victory points. And that's going to score us a heck of a lot of victory points right now. And now the yellow player has to give second thoughts about rushing the end of the game because the green player just made a lot of victory points on their turn. That ends their turn. We now move to the yellow player. It's now the yellow player's turn, and the yellow player can look over the green players and see exactly how many victory points they have, and they can eyeball it and figure that if they can do one good conquest, they can still pull the victory out of the game. So they're going to go ahead and roll their dice, and they're going to hope for a conquest. And we're going to go ahead and get a conquest. So with a big old grin, we're going to go ahead and see exactly what results we're going to get and see if we can win the game with a lot of style and score a lot of victory points. So we're looking at our results. We got food. We need 6 food to feed our empire. We're going to keep these food results. We know we're going to keep the conquest. This will be worth a total of 6 to work towards buying any kind of developments. Plus 5 is going to be a total of 11, so we're definitely going to keep that. And we have 3 workers we can put to work if we want to. And they're not quite enough to build anything, so we can decide to keep this or re-roll it. If we get a skull, we're going to be kind of in trouble, so we don't want to mess with that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and keep with what we got, knowing this is pretty much going to be wasted, but we're not going to care because we know we're about to win the game. So let's go ahead and get a rewards here. We're going to go ahead and get 6 food. We're going to go from 1 food all the way up to 7. We're going to get goods for every one of our ports for one of these die. This die is going to be worth 3 goods because we have 3 ports. This one's also going to be worth 3 goods because we have 3 ports for a total of 6 goods. We're going to go from 1 all the way up to 7. These dice are expended. These dice are expended. Now we need to go ahead and deal with any skulls we have, which we don't have. So now we need to feed our empire. We have 6 provinces. Costs us 6 food. We're going to go from 7 all the way back down to 1 food. And then we get to go ahead and do our conquest. We're going to look at our current conquest is at a 1. We have 7 military. 7 minus 1 is 6, so we're going to go ahead and earn a 6 tribute. So that's going to put us at 31 tribute. That means that this is going to be the last turn and the last round for this entire game. Our military is going to suffer a little bit of a loss because remember, fighting wars can be very damaging for any empire, but at least we got the tribute from that, and then the conquest level is going to go up 1 point. Not that that really matters because we know that this is the last round of the game. Because one of the end game conditions is as soon as somebody has 31 points of tribute or more, the game is going to end on that round. So now that we've dealt with our combat, we get to go ahead and build up on our empire and see exactly what we can do to gain some points. We have 3 workers to go ahead and put to work anywhere we want. If we can put them in places, that's going to help us. Unfortunately, there isn't really anything our population can do, so we're just going to put them to work towards building the obelisk just because we can. Nothing really else to do with them, and we're done with our building phase, and now we get to go ahead and spend our innovations plus our goods on a development. We have 5 plus a total of 7 for a total of 12 points we can spend. We're going to go ahead and figure out exactly what we can buy that's going to give us the most victory points towards the end of the game. We see for the amount of innovation, the amount of goods, and the most effective thing we can buy for the most amount of victory points right now would be to spend 10 on the aqueducts, which is going to give us 9 victory points towards the end of the game. That would cost us 10, which would be 5 from here plus 5 from our goods, bring us down from 7 all the way back down to 2 goods. That's going to end our turn. We don't have any goods we need to put into money because this is the last round of the game, and we can go ahead and add up the scores for all of our players. We'll start by adding up the scores for the green player. The green player's first thing to do is they're going to figure out how many points they get from monuments. They're going to get 2 points for this monument plus 6 for a total of 8 points for their monuments. They need to figure out how many points they're going to get for their developments. We're going to see that we get 13 plus 5 is 18, plus 2 is 20, plus 1 is 21. But on top of that, they're going to get a little bit more besides this 21 because they also have the civics advancement, which is going to give them 3 bonus points for every monument they built. They built 2 monuments. That's 6 victory points. They're going to get a total of 27 points just for their developments. We're going to see how many bonuses we get. And I actually should have added the 6 from the bonuses down here, but I'm not going to be able to write upside down too well without most of you laughing at me here. So we'll do 21. We got 21 here. We got 6. We got 8. We're going to figure out how much tribute we have. We don't have any tribute, so that's going to be a total of 0. So we're going to add up 21 plus 8 is 29. So we got a total of 35 victory points right there. Then we're going to lose 2 from disasters, leaving us with a total of 33 victory points for the green player. Now we got to add up the victory points for the yellow player, who we can already eyeball and see that he won, but let's go ahead and add up their victory points anyways. The yellow player is going to go ahead and get 0 points for monuments. We didn't manage to build any monuments at all. Then we're going to get some victory points for our developments. We're going to get 9 for aqueducts. We're going to get 5 from metallurgy. That's 14 plus 4 from irrigation. It's a total of 18 points from their developments. We don't have any bonuses that are going to matter. The only bonus we could have got is we got 1 point for every 3 food. We don't have enough food left over back in our back stock. So we're not going to get any victory points from bonuses. So now we add up our tribute. We have a total of 31 points from tribute. And that's going to give us a total of 49 victory points. And then we're going to lose 4 from disasters, which is going to give us a total of 45 victory points, making the yellow player the grand winner of the game. I hope you enjoyed the sample gameplay video showing a 2-player game of Roll Through the Ages, the Iron Age. Now I kind of went through things a little bit quickly, but I tried to take enough time to explain to you what the decisions were, so you can see that there are some really good decisions in this game and just some really good strategies, especially how as a yellow player I was trying to force the end game, because I knew as the yellow player, if I could force that end game before the green players started getting their economy engine really rolling and they could buy a lot of the developments, especially the really expensive developments, which could have brought them the game. So as a yellow player, my goal was to rush the end game, score the victory points the quickest through tribute, and just win the game. And luckily, as a yellow player, that definitely worked out for the yellow player. Wasn't really a close game, 33 to 45. I've had much closer games. I've had games won by 1 victory point only. So you can definitely see how this game can be very close and very enjoyable. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for part 3 where I give you my final thoughts on Roll Through the Ages, the Iron Age.